So finally, the tropical vivarium from DMS Vivaria, which is just behind me here, has finally got its inhabitants. I am very glad to say, because we set this viv up back in November and it's just been sat with plants growing in it for ages now. But we do finally have the inhabitants, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about them in full detail. So I am actually going to show you the footage of me unboxing, or whatever you want to call it, the geckos when I got them on Thursday, currently Saturday when I'm filming this. But before we do that, I do just want to give some background information onto what's been happening behind the scenes with the Tropical Viv. So about 5 months ago in November, I did make a full video on how I set up the Tropical Vivarium. And in that video I did say, I think, that I was gonna get some inhabitants for it, because that has always been the intention. But I couldn't get them presently when I set it up, and I thought that I was going to have to wait a relatively short amount of time for my local exotic shop to get them back in stock, what I was looking for, and that did not happen. Now, originally the species that I was wanting to keep was the Cameroon dwarf gecko, Lygodactylus conraui. Now, I had seen that in stock in my local exotic shop, Warrington Pets and Exotics, but they weren't in stock at the time, and I kept checking back. I kept messaging them on Facebook and stuff, and they weren't getting them in. And all the breeders that I contacted, they would not ship them in the winter or whatever. So basically the Viv was stuck without any inhabitants. As I mentioned, the vivarium is from DMS Vivaria. Now Dale from DMS did kindly send me the enclosure for me to set up and then to in the future review, which I've still not done yet, because how can I review something if I've not had any inhabitants to test it out? So I will be doing that in the future. And also Skylight, which is a lighting company, and these two plant growth lights up there, they also chipped in with those lights. So yeah. But anyway, that's not the focus of today's video. Today's video is all about the inhabitants. Now, as I was saying, I couldn't get a hold of the L. conraui, and so I was sort of getting a bit despairing by the time it had sort of got to the end of January, and I was still just looking at plants, because plants are cool, but, you know, geckos are cooler. So by that point, I was starting to look into other species that I could possibly keep. And in my local exotic shop, or one of them anyway, there are two that I go to now, I did see a pair of line day geckos available. Now this was going back about 3 weeks ago, and at that point I knew a bit about that species, but not an awful lot. So I went into the shop to see them, see how big they were, suss them out and that, and sort of see, could I keep them in my enclosure potentially? And after I saw them I thought, you know, good chance of that, and I went away and did some research. And as it turned out, which I will discuss later on in the video after we've done the unboxing, that species did actually seem a better fit for the enclosure than the one I had originally set it up for. And so a week later, I had intended to go back and buy them. But the day before, somebody had got in touch with the shop via their website, and I bought them online, and so that left me with nothing. Luckily, this time round, Arcadia Reptile did actually come to my aid, perhaps inadvertently, and they did not know it, but I follow them on Facebook, as you probably should as well if you're into reptiles, and they shared a post from Global Geckos, which is a company in the UK that sells livestock as well as reptile supplies. And I had heard of Global Geckos, knew that they did a range of stuff, but hadn't checked them out for what they actually stocked. And so when I sort of caught wind of them and it reminded me of them, I thought, I'll give them a check out. And needless to say, they had loads of things in stock. They had line day geckos, peacock day geckos, and the Cameroon dwarf geckos that I'd been looking for ages. And so basically all I had to do was make a choice. Each one of those species I would have been equally happy to own. The peacock day geckos being one of my absolute favourite day geckos, and the line geckos being a really good one because not many people keep them, and then the Cameroon dwarf geckos because I've seen them before and they're nice. Which is basically as simple as that. So, you know, all I had to do then was just pick out the exact species that I wanted to keep, and as we kick off in the unboxing, you will find out which one I did eventually go for. So here we go, it's time to open them. I've been sort of waiting for this moment for a lot of months now, and I am really kind of excited for this. So if I sort of forget that we're being filmed and say some weird stuff, don't be too surprised. But anyway, let's get into opening them. So, I've never actually had reptiles come in the post before. I have had shrimp from, I don't know if anybody remembers Sean Brook Shrimp. They're good company, but they've closed now. I might potentially have to go and get a knife rather than a letter opener for this. That's probably a good idea. So I've got the tape off the box and we can finally open it up. Now, before we move on, I will just say, shout out to Global Geckos for this packaging because it looks really secure and that, which is always a good thing. But yeah, let's open them up. So like I say, I've never done this before and I do just want to be quiet because, oh, there's the heat pack. Slightly warm, which is good. Now let's see what we've got here. And I'm not just putting newspaper in the bib, by the way. More boxes. Box number 1. Box number 2. So, as you can see, I have just brought you down onto my lap so that you can see this better, but let's crack on with getting them out because I'm sure they want to be out, and reptiles don't tend to like being stuck in boxes, but yeah, let's get on with it. So, this little box is marked with a number 1. It doesn't look like it's taped up. I presume it'll have like a little plastic box or something inside, so hopefully this little fella's not going to come flying out, but here we go. Yep, he's in a, well, I'm saying he. I don't know if this is the male or female because I am getting a pair. Now, I can't, oh my god, he's so small. Whoa, he's tiny. You see in there? That little fella, you'll see him better. Let me point. That black line is literally the lizard. Now, whether this guy's a male or a female, I don't know. But it is absolutely microscopic. Now, let's get the other one out. And then after we've done this, I'll release them into the viv and I'll talk a bit more about what they are and what my plans are for them. So, here's this one. Let's take a peek in here. Can we see it? Are you there? Or are you hiding very well in this blue paper? Oh, I can just see something, but I very much doubt that you'd be able to see it. So I think we'll call it quits there with these for now, and I'll go and release them in the viv, and you can see them, and then I'll tell you all about everything that I'm thinking with these and what my plans are for them. So hopefully you've got a good view from there. You'll see these guys better in the light. I don't know which one's the male and which is the female. Like I say, I'm sure I'll find out. One of them has come in a box that's like for crickets. You probably can't see, but on the top it says crickets. The other one's in a locust box. So I'm sure if I contact Global Geckos, they'll know which box they put the male in, which box they put the female in. But I'm going to release them now. I am really hoping that because the cold, well, not freezing cold, but cold-ish, that they won't be up to much escaping malarkey. So I think I've decided what I'm going to do is just put the 2 boxes in the enclosures, take the lids off them, then shut the doors and just let them come out of in their own time, because I don't want to stress them out and I cannot risk these escaping, because if they get out there's like no chance of me ever finding them and they're gone. So I'm going to go in through the other door now and try and get them out of this little conundrum that they're in this paper. So if we take the first one, sorry buddy, I know, I know I'm a big and scary man. Go on. Out you go, pal. Whoa, don't do that. This way. Go on. Shh, shh, shh. Shh. Go on. Whoa, 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 not that way. The other way. So I've managed to get number 1 off onto that leaf, and now all I've got to do is get the other one that's just down there out the box, and then I'll show you them both in the enclosure. So that is the other one in the enclosure. This one's got far more patterning. Apologies for awful filming, but I am still shaking and I can't put it on a tripod. So this one has far more patterning than the other one, which has run off down here. You probably can't see it, maybe, but yeah, they are looking good, not too feisty, and of course these are juveniles. But I'm gonna leave it at this for now, and then I'll pop back in a few days and tell you all about them. So back to the future, as it were, you can tell that I did obviously opt for the line day geckos. Now this was for a number of reasons. Now the first biggest one really is, as I mentioned before earlier on in the video, the Cameroon dwarf geckos, as it appeared, perhaps weren't the best fit for a species to go in this enclosure because of the temperature range they need versus the other species that were available. And then, like I said, the peacock day geckos are like one of my favourite species, well high up on my wish list for animals I want to keep in the future. But they were only being sold as unsexed juveniles, and it is my intention to breed what's in this enclosure. And so that is why I did go for the line day geckos, which is what you saw me taking out the box in there. More specifically, the subspecies that I've got is Bombatocensis, so the scientific name is Phelsuma lineata bombatocensis, which I'll probably chuck a caption up in case I've just absolutely butchered that name and you cannot understand what I've just said. So I'm sure that lots of you won't really be familiar with this species because honestly it isn't kept very often. People do keep it and it is captive bred, my pair, because they are a male and a female, as I've probably mentioned, but they are captive bred, CB 2018, which is always good because wild caughts can have parasites, but that's a topic for another day, let's not go there. But anyway, because they are sort of not really well known, I do want to give some information about them, so that for anybody who's not heard of them, you do sort of get a feel for what they are. Now, line day geckos, the species Phelsuma lineata, there are actually 4 subspecies. I can't remember them all, but the ones I've got, as I've said, are Bombatocensis. They are from the island of Madagascar, which I'm sure you'll all be familiar with, and they sort of range up the east coast. Unlike many geckos, or most geckos really, they are day geckos, as it were. All the geckos in the genus Phelsuma are referred to as day geckos, and for good reason, because they are diurnal as opposed to being nocturnal or crepuscular. They are rated by the IUCN Red List as being least concern, so in the wild they aren't really endangered or anything, but honestly, with them not being a very well studied species, that could change very rapidly, so getting a good captive breeding population established is absolutely vital to the survival of the species. Line day geckos, like the rest of the Phelsuma species, are known to be omnivorous, so they will eat sort of sweet fruits, nectar, bits of pollen, and stuff from flowers and all that, and also lots of insects. What I've been feeding mine on currently is just fruit flies, and because basically I've had them 3 days, I've fed them 4 times, and they've only eaten the flies, which is half of what I've offered. The other stuff, which is like crested gecko diet, they haven't touched yet, but I'm sure in the future they will. Now, with them being so uncommon really in the reptile keeping hobby, there isn't very much information about them. The stuff that is there is basically just cut and copied information from other similar species like the gold dust day gecko and the giant day gecko, but there is nothing specific about the line day gecko really. Which is why when I was researching how to care for them, I looked at like weather station information as opposed to stuff that people had just put up online of their own accord. So what I was looking at was basically I used the IUCN Red List to look at the natural range, and then I found like a weather station website to look at the year-round temperatures. I'll be chucking them up all around the screen so that you can have a look at the graphs yourselves, just to see what sort of temperatures they need. And you'll get the basic impression that the highest temperatures that they'll ever receive in the wild during the summer months. Of course, you might think it's weird that it's warmer in like what we would up in the northern hemisphere would consider to be the winter, and that is because they are below the equator, so the seasons are all swapped around. But basically it looks like they need relatively cool temperatures with sort of peaks going into the summer, which is why presently, or to start with at least, I've not got a heat bulb on them. Conversely, the Cameroon dwarf geckos do need, well, looking at their weather station information, they're sort of exposed to much higher temperatures, and so it would be a good idea for those to have a dedicated hotspot. Or this was sort of the thinking that I've had, and it's why I've just got sort of like the heat coming off the UVB bulb and the plant lamps, and that is getting like 27 degrees at the minute at the hotspot, which would sort of seem appropriate. But I did try just putting a heat mat on the side of the enclosure to see if they'd use it, and so far the pair of them have both been going on the heat mat a lot and staying right at the top of the enclosure. So in the next few days here, I am going to chuck a heat lamp up there, change out the lighting a little bit to get it a bit hotter for them, because even though the research suggests they should be fine, I don't think it quite's right yet. But I will update you all about this in the next video I do on them. But anyway, I'm sure you're fed up of just hearing me talk now and probably want to see how the geckos are getting on, so let's take a look. So as we take a look in the vivarium here, you will see that there is a sort of big yellow thing stuck in there, and that is a ProRep jelly pot. Now before anyone starts bashing me for these things not being the most nutritionally satisfying, I do know it's just in there because I sort of wanted to try them with it. Also, it might like help hydrate them and stuff with them being a new addition to the family. And also, I need the pot, the empty pot to like put things in for them. So I thought I'd put it in there and see what they make of it. Not touched it yet. But anyway, the geckos are in sort of the favourite spots at the minute. The female is perched right up there, just about focusing there. You can see it, that black stripe along the flank, which is where they get the name line day gecko from. And you can see just about the patterning on the back, which is how you identify the subspecies primarily. And these are, as I've said, Bombertokensis. Now, if we go over here, this is where the male tends to hang out. He sort of sits on this branch, and they do bicker, the two of them like fight and that. I'll talk about that in a sec. But then the male is down there. Can't see him very well because he's hiding. He'll probably come out more when I chuck some fruit flies in to show you them feeding in a minute. But I have just got the heat mat stuck on there. I've got the probe right here for the thermostat because I did just have all this equipment just sat around spare. So I thought I'd try it with them, and the pair have been using it a lot. So I will probably chuck a heat lamp up here. I'll have to get a smaller UVB bulb. But so far, that is the pair of them, and that's how they're doing. So as I said, the male and the female have been fighting a bit. Only once have I seen it sort of get quite aggressive. And that I did kind of expect. Because the male, which was the one that came out and sat on the leaf right there, when I put them in the enclosure, the female is the one that sort of ran off up there and hid in the moss. She stayed there for quite a bit. She's up there right now. But they have been sort of chasing each other round a bit, with the male being significantly the larger one of the two. He's basically been winning every time. He'll chase the female off. Say if he's up on his branch and she wants to come and sit on it, he'll just give her a nip and then she'll run off. which might sort of be worrying, but I'm actually kind of glad that it's working in the way it is. Now, this is because if the pair of them were to be sort of similarly matched and they were to start fighting with each other, then it's likely that they keep fighting all of the time because there wouldn't be a clear winner. Whereas with the male, which he's just come out now and it's looking really good, with him being the bigger one of the two, you can probably tell just by looking at them, and the more colourful one, he can just sort of win the fights, and so there's going to be like a pecking order established, so they won't be fighting all the time, and hopefully we will have more success with breeding them. It's sort of funny though that these guys like fight, because just look at how cute they are and how colourful they are, and if I put my hand sort of here, they're absolutely microscopic, but they are by far the most little vicious, aggressive little reptiles I've ever had. But hopefully they will calm down and the fighting will sort of stop. It's sort of not very aggressive at all, it's just like chasing and stuff. And they have both eaten for me, so they obviously aren't too stressed. But on that note, how about we try feeding them? Well, so far, it kind of seems that the best feeding clip I'm gonna get yet is of one of the fruit flies eating the jelly pot, rather than one of the geckos eating the fruit fly or the jelly pot. When filming the outro, I have just realised that there is a fly kinda near to the female, and she might go for it. So that the feeding, so the feeding was not a complete failure. So after that failed attempt at feeding, basically, that brings us sort of to the end of the video. Now, I have tried to balance this video out sort of between information and sort of exciting stuff, but obviously for like the information and that, I haven't got that much to share at the minute because I am new to these geckos, and these geckos are sort of new to us as reptile keepers, so I will be talking more about information and stuff in the future, but for now that is it on there. The only thing that I have got left to mention is that I haven't got names for them yet, so if you have some name suggestions then do drop them down in the comments section. Just for a little bit of inspiration, do remember that we have got one male and one female, so I'm looking for one male and one female name, and also know that the female is the more timid one, and that the male has got a little bit of a kink to the very end of his tail, so if you fancy coming up with something that's to do with those traits then feel free. But anyway, by the next time you see this setup and the geckos, which is probably going to actually be in next week's video because I'm going to do a reptile room tour, I should hopefully have the different lighting system in place for them by then, and hopefully they'll be a bit more explorative of the enclosure because it's warmer and stuff. But anyway, I'll give you the update next week, and for now, that is it. I do really hope that you've enjoyed this video and that you're excited to see these new additions, and you're as excited as I am for the future, because obviously I've got a male and a female, because I do have intentions of them breeding, but that'll probably be much further down the line when they're more established and all that. Obviously with them not being kept very commonly, it is going to be a major learning curve for me doing it for the first time without these like dead extensive sheets telling you on what to do at every single stage, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.